you like to begin?
Thank you. Now begin? Okay. I'd like to call the meeting to order for February 6th, the regular meeting of the Petaluma City Council and Petaluma Community Development Successor Agency, and invite the translator to provide information on how to participate in Spanish. Maria Galvez and Monica Aparicio are our hosts tonight. Please introduce.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. Hola, me llamo María Galvez y estoy aquí con mi pareja de interpretación, Mónica Aparicio. Estamos hoy aquí como intérpretes. Hoy este evento se llevará a cabo en español e inglés. Se usarán ambos idiomas activamente, así que usted podrá elegir un canal para participar en su idioma preferido después de que le hayamos explicado cómo funcionará la interpretación. Estaremos usando la función de interpretación de Zoom. Después de que termine esta explicación, se activará la función de interpretación. Si usted está conectado con su computadora, usted verá un icono de un mundo en la parte inferior de su pantalla. Si usted está conectado con su tableta o teléfono, pulse en más y verá un menú que incluye la opción de interpretación de idiomas. Para escuchar la interpretación, pulse el icono del mundo o interpretación de idiomas. A continuación, elija su canal de idioma. We're ready.
Thank you very much. One announcement before we get into the meeting tonight. I want to remind council members and the public, we're to provide our preliminary recommendations, our straw poll for the top 5 candidates of our choosing for the General Plan Advisory Committee appointments that'll be discussed on item 7 as we get down that far in the agenda, but council's submitting their straw poll before we begin the meeting. It'll be reflected in documents shown in the presentation. And now roll call.
Thank you. Councilmember Barnacle.
Here.
Vice Mayor Cater Thompson.
Here.
Councilmember Healy.
Here.
Councilmember Now.
Here.
Councilmember Posake.
Here.
Councilmember Shribs.
Here.
Mayor McDonald.
Here.
All members are present.
Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Now we have a moment of silence. Thank you. Let's see. I don't know of any requests for agenda changes and deletions to what we're doing tonight, so we're confirmed on that front and moving on. And we have tonight a proclamation from the city, which I'd like to read out for Black History Month. And we have 2 members of our community who will, may you step forward and receive this proclamation. Faith Ross and Gloria Robinson, you can join us up the front. And let me just read what this says. City of Petaluma Proclamation, Black History Month, February 2023. Whereas Petaluma Blacks for Community Development was established in 1978 by a group of concerned Black residents to acquaint the community with Black culture and history, to provide support for new Black families moving into the area, and to ensure that the Black community became a positive part of the larger Petaluma community. And whereas Petaluma Blacks for Community Development, in keeping with their goals and objectives, have continuously provided a venue for sharing with the community through an annual Black History program, museum exhibits, and individual members' involvements in various community organizations and activities. The group has continued to provide support for Black families through social gatherings and reaching out to each other. And whereas Petaluma Blacks for Community Development has continuously supported our youth by making them active participants in the organization, encouraging them in their involvement in school and community activities, and teaching them to value our Black history. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Kevin McDonald, Mayor of Petaluma, along with members of the City Council, do hereby acknowledge February 2023 as Black History Month and commend Petaluma Blacks for Community Development in their effort to support the community at large and to provide our city with Black cultural activities and an awareness of Black heritage. Thank you very much. Would you like to add something?
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to you all. I'd like to say thank the city council. Oh, okay, thank you. I'd like to thank the city council and our new mayor for this proclamation. Our name is Petaluma Blacks for Community Development. When we say development, we mean develop relationships within the community. And I'm happy that this is our 45th anniversary of sharing Black history with the community. And I'd like to thank each and every one of you guys that have supported us. One city councilman up there, Mike, has been a part of the city council, a part of Petaluma Blacks activities for years. I don't think he missed any of the programs we've had. He's always there. And I would like to thank you in public tonight, Mike. And this is the president of the group, Faith Ross, and she has something to say. Did you want me to share a schedule, or are you going to do it? Just
The
tell 'em
schedule.
the one about the main event for the 45th year.
To the mayor, city council members, city manager, and other city officials, thank you for the proclamation. We really appreciate your support and look forward to a continued working relationship with you. This is our 45th anniversary of sharing Black history and culture with the community. As Gloria said earlier, our mission has not changed in the 45 years, but we spend more time getting involved with the community and having community members join us in our journey. And we really appreciate that. This year, we have turned over to the Petaluma Library many of our documents that tell our history. These papers and other items will be archived on the library webpage and be available to anyone wishing to see them. We are excited about the potential to view our history on the World Wide Web. We have also added to our webpage our youth journal, and I really encourage you to go and look at that and see in 2 years what these students are doing and how much they're participating, not only in the events that we do for them, teaching them about our history, but getting involved in the community. How many things, how many service projects they've done. They've really just, I don't know, they've just taken it on. I'm surprised. And it's not just that they just do our service. They are in basketball, they're in baseball, they're in soccer. They have other things going on too. So please go and look at their little history on the webpage. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're moving to general public comment. During general public comment, the public's invited to make comments on items of public interest that are within the City Council's subject matter jurisdiction and that are not listed on the current agenda. Public comment is limited up to 3 minutes per person. Depending on the number of persons wishing to address the council, time will be allocated in equal shares, totaling no more than 20 minutes. So, do we have any online comments?
Mayor McDonald, yes, we received 5 comments prior to the meeting, which are posted online with the agenda packet.
Thank you. Can we check on the internet, tonight's Zoom meeting, to see if there's public comments?
Okay. At this time, I will start a 30-second clock for general public comment. Members of the public attending in person should bring their speaker cards to the clerk's desk if they have not already done so. Members of the public attending online should raise their virtual hand or press *9 if participating by phone. Speakers are reminded to be respectful in their comments and that this meeting is being translated. Please pause between sentences for translation. A countdown will appear for the convenience of the speaker and the viewers. And we have one person with their hand raised.
Thank you very much. We have 4 in-house, and I think I'm sensing a fifth, and that totals 6. So the time would be 3 minutes per each speaker. And let's start with our Zoom participant first.
So, Mayor, we have Pedro M. Pedro, I have started the button for you, and you can begin speaking now.
Hi, everyone. This is Pedro Mora from Midtown, and the subject at hand is Cedar Grove. And 2 weeks ago, I came here to express my concerns for the safety of our neighborhood, the waterways, and the community at the location. And I wanted to appreciate all your support on listening to the issue. And I come here today with a few new data points from the weekend and to provide a perspective of how dear and near is to me the situation, but also to the safety of our community and how we need to act quickly in the situation. So over the weekend, we had new tents set up behind House 91 Roca, right next to the fence of one of my neighbors. I have a 6-month-old daughter that has my wife is nursing her from the room. From the window, we can see someone that's disturbed, if you will, or screaming that needs some sort of support. But I'm concerned for my own safety, as he can see into my window while my wife is nursing if I don't close the window. So the situation continues. And my understanding is that folks know it's a priority and there are things taking place to support. But to me, the situation is not getting better and it's getting worse from 2 weeks ago. So I come here to ask to continue to be a support on the agenda and to act swiftly on the matter as we are seeing trash collected in the water, as we've seen more tents coming up, and as we've seen the safety of the people there. So I came here to thank you for listening and reaching out. I heard from the city assistant manager. I also had a chance to meet with a couple of the council members. So I know it's a important matter, but I'm also here to speak on the behalf of the community that we're concerned for our safety, and we would love to have actions be quicker.
Thank you, Pedro. Next speaker. There's nobody else on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Let's move to the speakers in the room. And the first speaker will be Peter Chernoff, followed by Catherine Brabowski.
Good evening. And I was going to say something really nice about your tie, but it's not Chernoff, it's Cherneff. The other mayor had it down pat. I'm sure you must have heard it by now. Anyways, Black History Month. So it's funny how we listen to people that we look up to, but we don't take it very seriously. You know, Martin Luther King said, if one man's wrongfully incarcerated, so are we all. And I've written extensively about the brother Mumia Abu-Jamal was wrongfully incarcerated for 44 years. Green Beret Surgeon Dr. Jeffrey McDonald, 50 years. And today is the day that marks the 48th year for Leonard Peltier. 48 years. So how serious do we take these statements? Well, what should we do about them? Any action is only as powerful as what it attains. And we're the most powerful people in the most powerful state. And as I've said to the general public, to free the likes of you all as politicians is to shut down the system and then ask of you what needs to be done or tell you what needs to be done. So I'd also say that for getting ready for the earthquake, which is on its way, that would be very wise. Wisdom encourages 40 gallons of water per person, dry goods, rice, beans, seaweed, Amy's canned goods. And I personally would recommend that you withdraw your money from the banks. Why? Every 10 or 15, 17 years, the banks pull a funny game on the whole public and everything disappears and everybody gets upset. And then we do it all over again. And they don't like to waste a crisis. And when this earthquake happens, they're going to use that as a way to do more things. Not very good, but we have all the power. And so I recommend that people, as I've said before, regarding rents and the PG&E that's going way off through the roof, simply stop paying and we do it all together and we negotiate with them where we're holding all the cards. The taxpayers pay for the national seashore parks. Is that correct? The Tule elk are still being secretly shot and culled, fenced in. Does this have anything to do with who's buying their milk? Is it true that Strauss Organic Dairy is buying milk from them as organic fed cows? I was told that the Strauss people are actually pretty nice owners and the workers like them. Mioka's vegan gourmet cheese would say something like cashews takes a lot less water than to feed the cows to get some milk, and there's no stealing of the babies. But then again, there's the carbon footprint of hauling cashews around the world. Well, me, as Cactus Pete says, cactus requires no water. It would honor Luther Burbank, and it's time for us to bring everybody together and start 10,000 gardens and change this entire equation from where it's been to where it needs to be.
And thank you, Peter, but your time has expired.
It's because of water. And so we get
Thank you, Peter. Time up.
expired. Thank you very much. Have a beautiful day.
As someone
Get
who's
ready for the earthquakes.
As someone whose name is constantly misstated, I apologize particularly for that error. And Catherine Babowski be next.
Yes, my name is Catherine Vronsky. I live at the Littlewoods Mobile Home Park in Petaluma at 1821 Lakeville Highway. The so-called owners, called Harmony Communities, have sent all the residents letters that all the residents who own their mobile homes to register our mobile homes to the park owners that we own. And also, too, they're trying to do away with rent control over there. And that park is not being maintained. We got street lights in that mobile park, which is a safety issue. And I also sent you, I dropped some pictures, letters that we all got. And then on top of that, we're paying over 100% more for our gas. So like one person, like some of the residents have only one people will live in, we're paying 100% of the same amount that some of them have like 25 to 30 people live in 1-2 homes each. And also too, this park management, by law, is supposed to be a legal U.S. citizen to be a manager there. And I was told by several residents and several neighbors, she's not a legal citizen. I don't know how true it is, but I've heard. And also too, that park is not being maintained. She has her family parks illegally on the fire lanes, and they're still parked on the fire lanes, and the cops won't do anything about it. They park illegally on the red zone on Perry Lane. That's a safety fire issue. So who do I give this to? To the city attorney or? And like I said, they're trying to, the people that own their mobile homes, the park owners, Harmony Communities, is trying to get the residents to register our mobile homes to them. And that's illegal because we own the mobile home ourselves. Why should we register our mobile homes to a Harmony Community? And they have a bad reputation of being crooks. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Ramona Faith, followed by Chris Rubilu.
Good evening, and thank you, Mayor, council members, city manager, staff. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'm really here just to talk about the importance of our hospital services and our OB family birthing center. Providence did inform the Petaluma Healthcare District in December that it intends to close the family birthing center at Petaluma Valley Hospital due to lack of anesthesia coverage and low volume. The asset purchase agreement between NorCal Health Connect, which is a subsidiary of Providence, and the district requires that NorCal Health Connect operate Petaluma Valley Hospital's family birthing center for a minimum of 5 years, which means they need to operate it minimally through December of 2025. I want to make sure you're aware that the closure of the family birthing center without the approval of the majority of the Petaluma Healthcare District Board of Directors will be a default under this agreement. The district board is scheduled to discuss this matter at a regular board meeting next week, February 15th at 6 p.m., which is open to the public. More information on how to attend or submit a comment is available on our website, which is www.phcd.org. I think it's really important to understand that the OB services is a critical service for this community. The hospital is a critical service for our community. And the voters of this community voted based on a contractual agreement that Providence would operate the Family Birthing Center for a minimum of 5 years and the hospital for a minimum of 20. So we are certainly open and willing to meet with Providence, work with the Petaluma Health Center, work with community partners to come up with solutions. We're not focused on a transition plan, which is what was stated in the paper. We want to focus on options to keep this unit and this hospital thriving. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and thank you very much for attending the meeting. And I want to thank the city of Petaluma. We received, Elise Hempel and myself and the district board received a letter from Peggy and Mayor McDonald indicating and basically saying, we stand by you. We want to make sure that you do whatever you can to hold Providence to the agreement that we negotiate in good faith. All right? Thank you so much. Have a nice evening. And by the way, I'm Ramona Faith. I'm so sorry. From the Petaluma Healthcare District. Bye.
Thank you very much. Christopher Blue, followed by Rick Parker.
Good evening, Mayor McDonald and City Council members. It's great to be here. Chris Rebelo, I am always excited to talk about age-friendly Petaluma, and that's why I'm here. So for those of you who are new to the council, some background. The city committed to becoming age-friendly back in January 2020 when the council voted to join the AARP network of age-friendly communities. I describe age-friendly cities as livable communities that are great places to grow up and grow old in. As part of its commitment, the city owes AARP and the community an age-friendly needs assessment and action plan. I am proud that we are at the end of the needs assessment process, also relieved that we're at the end of the needs assessment process, and we are poised to begin the action planning part of the process. My colleague Nancy Frank is in the audience with me. I just want to give her credit. Nancy does age-friendly consulting as a professional. As a volunteer here in Petaluma, she did the yeoman's work on the needs assessment report. It's a data-driven analysis of the needs of older adults in Petaluma. It includes data from a community survey of 903 people. It also includes interviews that we did with city department heads and a group of nonprofit leaders. It also includes epidemiological and other data about this population and its risks. We've been at this for 3 years. COVID was a huge challenge, but we persevered. All of you should have received the report last week. I sent it out to you. It has also been shared with some stakeholders in the community. The report is basically complete. It has been approved by the Park and Rec Department and the Senior Advisory Committee. It just needs formal acceptance by you or the city manager's office. Please read the report. Please think about your priorities and how you want to lend momentum to this process. Also, think about age-friendly in terms of the upcoming budget cycle. The principles of age-friendly align with the city's priorities. That's great news. Age-friendly is one of the lenses, along with climate change and social justice, that the city is using when it decides how to allocate resources. The findings will inform the general plan process and will be shared with the Blue Zones project. Nancy and I will meet with the city manager later this month to design the action planning process. There are age-friendly projects underway in town. The listening benches, which is spearheaded by two senior advisory committee members, Rayleigh Album and Jennifer Laporte, is providing a really great service to older adults who have been isolated.
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have Rick Parker next.
Good evening, and thank you for your service. I'm Rick Parker. I live on Spyglass Road with my wife, Amy, and for about 36 years now, we've backed up to Adobe Creek, and we've been blessed by the beauty of Petaluma and being able to do that. And I just wanted to share a thank you and then some thoughts on water conservation and drinking water in the future. And the thank you is, over the last 2 months, on the creek behind our house, we had a sanitary sewer issue. And then during the most recent rains, we had a lot of bank erosion. And in both cases, I'm pretty sure it was Public Works, came out, we called them, different folks called, I think I called on one and a neighbor called. They came out right away, did a great job in the middle of the downpours, put rocks in the creek, to make sure the banks didn't erode further. And I just want to thank the city and the department, and you guys should know they did a great job. You probably hear a lot of the other stuff, right? So thank you on that. And then with respect to kind of water issues, just wanted to, we've been blessed by all this rain, right? And our reservoirs are up to about 100%. I think Lake Sonoma's 97, Lake Mendocino's at 115%, which is great news. The city has done, and I think the community has done a lot of great work on conservation, and we should be applauded right on the efforts there. I would just encourage the city council, in conjunction with the Sonoma County Water Agency, the Corps of Engineers, and the people that manage, our water supply and reservoirs, to look at the supply side in terms of water. There's been very little done on that, I think, over probably 30 to 50 years. And there are a lot of very creative solutions available, including raising the dams, both of which have been talked about, Warm Springs Dam and Lake Mendocino. I think it's possible. The engineers have looked at those kind of things and said it could be done. We see huge amounts of rainwater go by Adobe Creek behind our house every year. So I'd just like to encourage you to be looking at that. It's just a critical issue, obviously, for us, right? We came out of this drought. It's looking really great now, but we know it's cyclical. So I'd just really like to offer that up this evening, and something I think that we can do very proactively to ensure we have safe, clean drinking water as we move forward. So thank you and have a great night.
Thank you very much. And that was our last speaker for tonight. And so we'll close public comment for the evening and move to council comment. And tonight, for organizing council comment, I'd like to run from my left, Council Member Shribs to start and come right across the panel here. So please proceed.
Okay, thank you. So I was attending several activities and meetings weeks. I went to the generational housing workshop, which was last Thursday, and it's pretty much in line with what's happening on our GPAC and our housing element. And one of the key points that I learned from that is that every city in the region is dealing with the same issues and seeking some of the similar solutions. And there's a good opportunities for working together across the all the cities. And I think we're all trying to do the same thing here. So that was one of the good things. There is a high need for infill housing, high density, taller buildings are coming as what's needed financially to make everything work. There is a building going up in Santa Rosa that they're going to be doing a pilot project test casing even smaller, tiny units, less than 500 square feet, studios, and large blocks of that in a tall building downtown to get more people downtown working close to work and play. And of course, everything is oriented toward transit near the city center. So, and all the cities are heading in the same direction that we are. So that's like, we're all working together. That's a good thing. I did attend, there was a session by a ranger with the Fish and Game, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife, I should say. And it's about the laws about the bird nesting seasons, and there's actually migratory laws that apply to most birds, except for domesticated birds and special exotic birds. But for most birds are covered by migratory laws, and that we need to take care between February 15th and August 31st. It's nesting season, and there's lots of laws. We need to at least watch out for the birds. And there's a lot more details that was shared with us that the city heard. Okay, I was at the North Bay Watershed Association, and there is working with the RCTA and others there on the regional water and transit, is working on a watershed and water modeling is in development. They're looking at water, power, groundwater, sanitation, flooding, serving 600,000 people in the entire region. And they're also looking at various risks, fire, flood, power loss. And so the models are in phase 2 for the most part, and they're moving toward phase 3 and phase 4, but it's coming. And they're going to have much better analysis about how to deal with water coming in and coming out of the entire region in all its ways. So that's also good news. Folks are working on this very difficultly. The two things that are still coming for us is that we're going to continue to do conservation, and that we have to really look at groundwater use and recharge as a major solution effort. Also, just this morning, Michael will probably tell us more about the Sonoma County Water Agencies. All the cities were there today at this very large meeting. And good news, we have water, but we are in better shape than most, but still California. What I hit most is still lots of California, because the rivers only hit certain parts. Lots of California is still hurting, especially in some groundwater areas. And so the state is still going to be looking at calling this, we're still in drought, even though locally we've got a good supply of water. So just continuing to conserve. So there's some messaging that hopefully will be coming down from that area. I'm working with Relief, nonprofit, working on tree plantings, and we finished the phase 2 McDowell, and this Saturday, if anybody wants to join on Lucchese, about 100 trees are going to go into Lucchese Park this Saturday. And everyone is welcome to join in and help plant trees there so everybody can use them and have shade at Lucchese Park. But that's happening this Saturday between 9 and about 3 o'clock to get those in. The last session, we had over 100 people show up for volunteers. So please volunteer for that. And then I'm also working with students at Casa Grande High School. Students got grants, and we're putting in 50 trees there to help with shade and continuing on there. So both the school and the city are working hard to, after our 10,000 tree initiative, we're plugging away at it, over 500 trees this year, continuous effort. Then I did also attend the tenant protection workshop this last Saturday, and mostly attended by landlords and real estate managers. A few tenants did show up, and some tenant advocates did show up and express their opinions, hearing very similar stories to what we've heard here in our chambers. But the staff did a good job, I thought, of presentation, and we're looking for finding the balance between the rights of both parties. And so I'm looking forward to more work on that. And one of the things I did attend, the White House had a meeting about tenant protections, which I attended by Zoom, along with however many thousand also attended. But there's now a blueprint for the federal government for tenant protections that looks like it's going to follow along. Maybe they've used California tenant protections as their model, but I read the blueprint, the general principles and processes, which is very similar to like our general plan type principles and visions. And there's a lot of tenant protections in there. So one of the ideas, the outcoming of that is we're working on just cause evictions and changing the ordinances, looking at that, but maybe we ought to look at all of the tenant protections, because that's only a small section of the blueprint by the White House at this point that's being offered. And they want all the states to get in line with that blueprint, because a lot of states are not quite in line. Okay, that's my report for this last couple weeks.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Pozeke.
Thank you. The Youth Commission just starting work on sort of refocusing their project for this semester. They were first planning to have a Earth Day celebration at a time when there was some confusion about when Butter and Egg Parade was going to be. And when that became when that was changed to occur on Earth Day, they're still, I don't think they've come to a complete conclusion yet about whether to move their Earth Day celebration to a different weekend or to sort of focus on being part of the Butter and Egg Parade in a environmental way, to do some to undertake some environmental actions and then to advertise them during a march in the parade. So that's the Youth Commission. The Continuum of Care Board met last month, and I am happy to have been elected unanimously the chair for this year, although before everyone claps, note that I was the only volunteer for the position. Finally, I went on the PIT count, which is the homeless count that HUD requires us to do to be eligible for funding from them. I was involved in doing most of the west, just outside of town on the west side, a little more to the north, but also a good ways to the south. And gosh, I don't think it's representative that we only found one suspiciously homeless person. But again, this is an area that's far from downtown and services and such. And actually, Karen Shimizu was one of my partners for that. She is our housing coordinator. And so had a good time at that, had a good time. I've had a good time at all the relief tree plantings. I think that's very important. I'd urge everyone to try to get to one of those at least. And even if you think you have some inability to do hard work, such as planting trees, there's always something else to do to help the program. Thank you. That's all I have.
Councilmember Now.
Well, thank you. These two gentlemen also talked about the relief and tree planting. I was going to bring it up in my parks report. But the parks are looking really well because we have new trees planted, and it is a really good time planting those trees, and the water helps move that adobe. The airport, I'm happy to say, in 2 years, in 2025, they will have paid off their hangar loan project. And the first time I was on the city council, they took this loan out. So in 2 years, they're going to pay it off, and I'm really excited. And they're worried about not having any debt. I told them, I'm sure we can find other things to spend money on. They were a fun group to reunite because I grew up at the airport. And the parks are looking really nice in this wet weather. But the greatest thing is our float house down on the river. And they are having an event in February, the chocolate and mocktails on February 11th, which is this Saturday. They're going to have a partnership paddle, 11:30 to 1:30 and 2 to 4. So if you go down there, the float house is a real nice asset to our city and the river. And we talked about the Petaluma Museum at the proclamation. That is the Black History Month, and it's wonderful. The kickoff is Friday night, and it runs through March 26th for Enslavement to the Path of Freedom, the Power of Black Resistance. And of course, we heard it's presented by the Petaluma Blacks for Community Development. Also, our Petaluma High School, our oldest high school in Petaluma, is going to be celebrating 150 years this year. So they're looking for anybody who graduated and even parents and grandparents to contact the high school. The vice principal is trying to put something together in the Veteran Eggs Day Parade, and then again for homecoming in September. So that is my report for the last 2 weeks.
Wonderful. Thank you. Councilmember Cater Thompson.
Thank you. I just want to thank Ramona Faith for speaking on behalf of all the members of our community that want to keep an OB ward at Petaluma Valley Hospital. There is going to be a rally on Thursday, and it's going to be from 3 to 5:45, and then at 5:45, the rally will walk around the corner to the Petaluma Healthcare District. And so this is on North McDowell and Old Redwood Highway, so it's going to take place Thursday. And I encourage people to go and actually stay and go to the meeting and speak on this issue, because it's very important for a community to have a viable hospital and an OB ward. And I was at the League of California Cities Conference. There learned a lot of great information, a lot of updates on the laws. and what's going on in Sacramento, and it was definitely worth attending. Also, I was at my first SCTA meeting, the Sonoma County Transportation Authority meeting today. There's nothing to really report, and I'm trying to wrap my arms around what you do with SCTA. It's starting with 200 pages, and it was good, and I'm looking forward to our next meeting in March. But I do want to make just a comment about the General Plan Advisory Committee process. We've received a lot of letters encouraging us to support some people, and I appreciate that. But the way I'm going to be determining my choices, since I was on the General Plan Committee, I'm looking at where there's kind of voids within the committee today.
Janice, I think we may want to keep that for that item, to discuss on that item,
Under council comments under that item.
when we get to that item. That's a good thing to add.
I can do that.
Good.
Okay. And the other thing is, I want to, I'm just really thrilled that Gloria Robinson and Faith Ross for what they do for our community. They're two amazing women, and what they've done with the youth, it's pretty amazing. There's actually videos of their youth group, and I encourage people to go online and review it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Healy?
Thank you. In my days on SCTA, many years ago, we were always focused on getting 101 widened. So now you can shift and focus on something else. So you stick around long enough, something actually gets accomplished. It's amazing. Several things. I was able to attend the annual jazz concert at the Petaluma Museum for Petaluma Blacks. It was a lovely event. It had been in hiatus for a couple of years, but it was sold out, and I would encourage other folks to try to get there next year. It's very inspiring. Let's see, along with Councilmember Posake, I participated in the January 7 point-in-time homeless count, and we were also given an area that didn't seem like a very high propensity area to look for homeless folks. But, you know, when you're out there at dark 100 in the morning and you're actually looking for things, you spot things that you've noticed before but never really thought about. And so there were several trailers that appeared to be occupied on the side street next to Kaiser Permanente, which I'd seen before but never really thought about, but there they were. So, yeah, it's a fascinating process. The League of Cities Governance, Transparency, and Labor Relations Policy Committee met on January 27th. I participated along with our city clerk, who's a member. We had a presentation from CalPERS, and there were a couple of interesting takeaways from that. With the wacky financial markets the last several months, it's almost comforting to know that so far into the fiscal year, starting July 1, CalPERS overall returns are in the 0 to 1% positive range. Could be a lot worse. It's not what we want long term, but it could have been quite a train wreck. And they were also talking about how they are essentially doubling the portion of their portfolio committed to private equity, up to about 15%. And there was a long discussion about why that makes sense for them. And it's higher returns, it's less liquid. But if it's managed properly, it helps get the returns up a little bit higher than if they weren't doing that. So that was very interesting. And then there was a discussion of one particular bill, and the committee recommended support for AB 37, which is a bill that would authorize elected officials to use funds in their campaign accounts for home security, which is kind of an issue in a lot of different communities in our state these days. So we'll keep an eye on that one. And as Councilmember Shribs noted, the Water Advisory Committee did meet this morning. Lake Sonoma is at 241,000 acre feet. Its water supply pool would be full at 245,000 acre feet. And Lake Mendocino is currently over its water supply pool. It's over 100%. And in the days before this recently adopted forecast-informed reservoir operations methodology, or FIRO, the Corps would have already dumped that excess water out of Lake Mendocino. But they can keep it there until and unless they see another atmospheric river approaching. And the same thing will happen with Lake Sonoma, because it'll be over 100% of the water supply pool in the very near future. And they'll leave it there, as opposed to past years when they just dumped it down the river. So that's a big step forward. And I would say there wasn't a specific discussion on this morning, but what we're looking at primarily in terms of expanding water supply opportunities in the near term will be pumping excess Russian River water underground. And the Santa Rosa Plain has a couple of experimental well injection sites that are going to be coming forward in the very near future. And I think Petaluma Valley and Sonoma Valley will be right in line behind them. So our partners at Sonoma Water are very active in seeking grant funding. So this all doesn't come on our shoulders or the shoulders of our ratepayers. So and it would serve two purposes. I mean, if you take excess flows out of the Russian River at Forestville when it's just raging downstream and put it into the aqueducts and pump it underground, it replenishes the water supply, and it also means a little bit less water reaching Guerneville. So it's a twofer. And then the other thing two other things I wanted to mention out of that. One is that we have a tricky messaging situation on our hands here. I think it's fair to say that this drought is over for now, but we know another one's coming at some point in the future. We don't know when. And on the other hand, there are other parts of the state that are not in as good a shape as we are. But in order to preserve credibility with our citizens and our customers, we really can't be telling them they still need to be taking Navy showers and doing extraordinary efforts, although we want to continue pushing long-term conservation. So it's a fine line, but I think we can find a way to do that. And then the other piece of good news is that the Water Agency is restarting tours for electeds and senior staff of its facilities. And if you've never seen Collector 6 and the temporary dam, the rubber dam, and the fish ladder that we're talking about all the time, it's really worth going up there to see it. It's very worthwhile. And I believe there's also, relatedly, there will be public tours of the fish hatchery below Lake Sonoma this coming Saturday morning. So if that's something you haven't seen before, that's pretty interesting too. And then lastly, I wanted to comment on one public commenter's comments on Cedar Grove and the situation there, and it sounds like it's continuing to get more dire and closer to the existing neighborhood. I would like some feedback from staff. It could be tonight, it could be in a memo, but when we had the litigation over Steamer Landing, the injunction never prevented clearing the privately owned property down there, and it was only the publicly owned property. And with Cedar Grove, my understanding is the whole thing is privately owned, and it's extremely unsafe access. The only way to get in and out of the place is to run across the railroad tracks, and it's not going to be long before there's a really bad accident there, and people are going to want to know why we didn't do something about it. I don't think it's reasonable for us to expect that the Project Homekey site coming online in late March or early April is going to solve the problem for us. So I think there needs to be a more serious discussion about what we should be doing in the near term or getting started about Cedar Grove. So anyway, that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Barnacle.
Thank you. I'll start with, I was going to say congratulations, but thank you, Dennis, for stepping up. It's certainly one of the more challenging topics that cities are facing right now, so thank you. I've had two liaison assignments meetings. Sonoma Clean Power met. We elected Deb Fudge chair and Linda Hopkins vice chair. The longest presentation was actually on different types of teleconference public meetings because we now have members that are in Mendocino, so they want to be able to have hybrid meetings, and that's going to be changing starting in March. We heard from the customer service reps, and they've been getting a lot of calls about high bills. I think it's pretty much it's pervasive and everywhere. But they've actually had very, very few people opt out because Sonoma Clean Power is 5% below PG&E right now, and a lot of the bills are on the gas side, so we're dodging a bullet there. They gave an update on the different programs that they have. In the last year, they've dispersed about $500,000 of incentives and about $500,000 through their 0% financing program. What was sort of interesting was that 20% of that came in the month of December with some program changes. So it's a good time, I guess, to the money's starting to flow. And then the other thing that will be coming before the council, I think probably at our next council meeting as a consent calendar item is, Sonoma Clean Power is very focused on geothermal. We have one of the biggest geothermal resources in really the whole country. But there's a DOE grant that they're participating in, and they're asking all the cities to provide letters of support. And it's for a highly water efficient technology that has only been deployed, I guess, in a few parts of the world. And so hopefully we'll be leading the way on that. The other liaison assignment was for the Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee. It was sort of a modest agenda, but we had a presentation from David Ward on the Small Artwork Commission, which is up to $25,000 for small art installations. A couple of the ones that you might have seen, the mural in Telephone Alley, the mural at the Swim Center, and the Kenilworth sculpture. But they were really just sort of getting some ideas from the PBAC about how they could be using public art to sort of help with placemaking and slowing down traffic, things like that. So there's a lot of really creative artistic ideas from the PBAC that night. And then the other one was we had a presentation from the PBAC Vision Zero Ad Hoc Committee, which consists of the chair, the vice chair, and Pete Gang. And they came up with 6 recommendations from the County of Sonoma's Vision Zero Action Plan, which was to reduce speeds citywide to 25 miles an hour or below, invest in comprehensive citywide education, implement low-cost quick-build projects, close gaps in bicycle and pedestrian networks, update our city design standards, our street design standards, and then implement rapid response. There was, I would say, an attachment to the rapid response, in particular with some of the fatalities that we've had on McDowell recently, and just sort of feeling like there's a sense of paralysis about what we can do on that street, but we know it's not going to get better. So that was all. I'm looking forward to seeing folks at the relief tree planting. So, thanks.
Thank you. And in my activities, I was able to attend the Petaluma Library Advisory Board meeting. It's a vibrant library system, and a lot of it's happening in Petaluma right now. I participated in the Safe Streets Petaluma workshop, and want to thank Safe Streets and the city for bringing a consultant, a nationally known consultant, City Threads, to Petaluma to help us with getting us over to a more walkable, bikeable community. And it's an accelerator program, so I'm hoping that's exactly the yield of their studies, is that we accelerate our efforts. And thank all the other council who participated in that too. And I participated in the County Tax Measure O for Mental Health Oversight Committee. The gist of it is taxes are rolling in faster than they thought. They thought they'd collect 25 million. They're collecting 32 million. And the Oversight Board is suggesting that they budget for 32 million and get the money out into where it can do some good. So as county goes into budgeting, we're hoping that action occurs. I was also able to participate in the Petaluma Nonprofit Summit. It was hosted by Petaluma Rotary, and all of the nonprofit organizations in town came and pitched what their organizations were about, which in itself is amazing how much good is going on in Petaluma. But it was a funding and volunteer recruitment opportunity, and I think they really succeeded on that front. And then I also just wanted to mention that for public consumption is that we have a special workshop coming March 13th on council goals, and it never hurts to think ahead for what we need to be focusing on so we can come informed to that meeting. Thank you very much. Let's move to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, council and community. Over the last 2 weeks, staff have been doing a ton of outreach on our landlord-tenant protections ordinance, meeting with tenant groups and landlord and property owner groups, as well as holding 2 community-wide meetings. One was virtual and one was in person just this last Saturday. A survey has gone live and is being pushed out to the community. And Ingrid, remind me the URL?
cityofpetaluma.org/tenant protections. cityofpetaluma.org/tenant protections.
Thank you. And there's also an email, landlord, it's a long one, landlordtenantprotections@cityofpetaluma.org. But staff is also collecting data from both tenant groups and landlords, and we'll be bringing all of that information to council when we meet on March 6th to have a data-driven conversation. And I'm going to pass an update on Cedar Grove to our assistant city manager, but I do want to correct the assumption that it is on mainly private property. It is actually mainly on public property. And we've been working quite extensively out there with all of our partners to do outreach and make sure we have wraparound services for the folks that are out there, because everybody deserves a home. And Brian, if you could give an update on what we'll be doing in the next month.
Yeah, just to echo what Peggy said, we have been really stepping up our outreach efforts, and it's not just the city, it's really in conjunction with COTS and Downtown Streets team to make sure that we're talking to every individual out there, assessing their needs, and identifying available open shelter opportunities, whether it's at the Mary Isaac Center, at our People's Village, or at other shelter options that may be available in the county. So we are looking to identify those possibilities for every resident who's currently out there at Cedar Grove. And over the next month, we will continue that stepped up level of engagement for folks almost on a daily basis to make sure that we're meeting their needs. And you will start to see over the next month some enhanced cleanup efforts, more substantial cleanup efforts, including as part of the grant that we received, some environmental remediation along the river, as well as making sure that folks get moved to shelter options if they choose to avail themselves of those services. And so we'll be continuing to work with all of our partners to make sure that those cleanup efforts continue happening and that folks are safe and in the shelter that they can get into. So, thank you.
Thank you, Brian, and that'll conclude my comments for this evening.
Thank you. I just have one curiosity there. Taking the train north, I see dumpsters out there. Is that part of the city's efforts that get cleanup?
Correct. The city did place those, I believe, just before the holidays. So folks have been utilizing those. They get emptied, I believe, once or twice per week to improve the solid waste disposal out there.
Okay, thanks. That's great. And Councilmember Ely.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I would just ask if staff could provide council with a map of the site showing what's publicly owned and what's privately owned. I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. And let's see, now we're on to our consent calendar. And does anyone on the council have a request of change for the consent calendar? Then hearing none, I would like to suggest that now is the time for opening public comment on consent calendar. And let's check with our online, our early reports in.
Mayor McDonald, we did not receive any comments on the consent calendar prior to the meeting.
Thank you. And in our Zoom audience, do we have consent calendar comments?
Okay.
Members of the public attending in person should bring their speaker cards to the clerk's desk if they haven't already done so. Members of the public attending online who wish to speak to an item on the consent calendar should raise their virtual hand or press *9 if participating by phone. Speakers are reminded to be respectful in their comments and that this meeting is being translated. Please pause between sentences for translation. Threats of violence and obscenity are grounds for removal from this meeting. A countdown will appear for the convenience of the speakers and viewers. Your microphone will be muted at the end of the countdown. The first speaker will be acknowledged and invited to speak when the countdown begins. Please make sure to unmute yourselves when you are invited to do so. And we have no public speakers on the Zoom.
Wonderful. Then let's close public comment, bring it back to council. Councilmember Healy
Yeah, I would like to move the consent calendar items 1 through 4.
and Councilmember Posake. So that's a motion by Healy and a second by Posake. Can we have a roll call vote?
Barnacle,
Yes.
Cater Thompson,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
Posake,
Yes.
Shribs,
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay. Let's see. We are now at public hearings and matters for consideration. And as staff comes forward, I'll read that the item is. It's an introduction, first reading of an ordinance to amend the zoning map of the implementing zoning ordinance to change the zoning designation from Planned Community District Business Park and amend the Lakeville Business Park Planned Community Development at 3200 Lakeville Highway, 1677 Fisher Drive on behalf of LabCon North America, and finding this action is exempt from CEQA pursuant to CEQA guidelines, section 15183. And let's see, I think I'm introducing Greg Powell today to begin the presentation.
Good evening. We're still setting up here.
Okay.
Thanks. Did I lose the Zoom connection?
I can share the presentation if you'd like, Greg.
Okay, let's do that.
Give me just a moment.
I apologize, we seem to have lost my Zoom connection. Yeah, actually.
Just let me know when to advance the slide.
That's why I always have paper. I guess we don't have to rely on technology always. I can just be a human and talk to you guys. Good evening, Mayor McDonald and and members of the City Council. My name is Greg Powell, and I'm the project planner for the LabCon North America expansion project. And I will present the zoning amendment that relates to what LabCon wants at Lakeville Highway. So we can go on to the next slide. And thank you, by the way. I'm going to try to keep this quick and short, but I won't talk too fast that the captioner and translator can't keep up. So the slide that you have now in front of you is the project location and context. The project site's surrounded in blue. Lakeville Highway abuts it to the north, Cater Lane to the east, Fisher and South McDowell, and the Adobe Creek kind of surrounded on the south up and towards the west. The area north of Lakeville Highway is a residential neighborhood. The area to the south of Lakeville is predominantly industrial, but there are pockets of retail at South McDowell, and then there's some residential further west. Next slide, please. Sort of the focus of the amendment that's presented to you tonight is to change the zoning. And so this map kind of provides the context for it, and this is the general plan and land use map, and the site again is shown in blue. And as you can see, most of the area below Lakeville is BP, that's Business Park. The areas to the north are residential, and the site is 100% within the BP land use classification. Next slide, please. The zoning map is where the difference starts. The north part of the site shown in blue is in the BP zone, and the southern portion of the site is in the Lakeville, it's in the PCD zoning district, and there's a Lakeville Business Park document that sets forth the zoning for the southern part of the site and some of the parcels to the west and to the south are in the Lakeville Business Park district. The site is split zoned, but the general plan designation is the same, which is BP. The city established the Lakeville Business Park District in 1981, and the intention was to provide a more straightforward way to develop large industrial areas than what the underlying zoning at that time, which was ML, would allow. Next slide. Thank you. So the first thing we always like to talk about when we're doing discretion or legislative acts and planning is we think about CEQA. So the California Environmental Quality Act applies to the action that's presented to the City Council tonight. And it's useful to think about the background. And the Planning Commission met on January 24th, about 2 weeks ago. And prior to recommending that the council adopt these amendments and prior to approving the site plan and architectural review for the LabCon project, they made a CEQA determination. And just real quick, the section of CEQA that applies is 15183, and no one needs to be responsible for the section of code, but CEQA was set up to require different types of environmental review, but if a project is found to be consistent with the general plan, and the general plan was adopted by the city, and an EIR was prepared, subsequent development that's consistent with the general plan need not do an additional environmental review. And that applies in this case. And for the council's benefit, the city prepared an analysis to walk through the different topic areas that are subject to CEQA, and that's in your attachment number 4. I'd like to skip to the next slide. So the first part, it's fun. We need to amend the zoning map. So you can see that PCD is supposed to be stricken. You can't quite tell that, and it's to replace the zoning with BP. And in your staff report, and I'll just quickly highlight, there's some findings required to change the zoning and to amend the Lakeville PCD to pull this site out of the Lakeville PCD document. One of the first ones is you have to say it's consistent with the general plan. The staff report documents how we believe that to be the case. We also have to, the city also needs to document that the public necessity, convenience, and general welfare is pursued, or the project's consistent with that, and we believe that that to be the case. Next slide. All right, so this slide shows the Lakeville PCD. So you can see the number of the parcels, and again, the site that's proposed to be changed from Lakeville PCD to the BP zone is shown in blue. The zoning amendment, and for context, the Planning Commission needed to make the same findings that the council was asked to do, and to make the recommendation to you to adopt the ordinance. And one of the key things to kind of point out is when you change the zoning or you change Lakeville PCD or a PCD district, the city needs to say something about the development that would come after that. And the benefit here is that the Planning Commission approved site plan and architectural review, and that helps the Planning Commission and helps the council make 3 of the required findings. And one of them is that the development is appropriate for the proposed use, and it's appropriate in relation to adjacent land and nearby properties. One of the other findings is the natural and scenic qualities of the site and surrounding area would be protected. And then finally, the site would be developed in a manner that would not be detrimental to the public welfare, will be in the best interest of the city, and will be keeping with the general intent and spirit of the Petaluma General Plan. Well, those findings have been made and are detailed in your staff report. Let's skip to the next slide. This is where we talk about the site and sort of what caused the need to change the zoning. In this drawing, it shows the existing conditions, developments along the north side of the site, along Lakeville Highway, and that's where LabCon North America has a 40,000 square foot warehouse. The zoning boundary is also the boundary between the developed portion of the site and the undeveloped portion of the site. And it shows on this slide the areas that are under the BP zone and the areas that would be, but are currently within the Lakeville PCD. Next slide, please. Another great slide to show one of the reasons why the zoning amendment's been requested, and that's the proposed building is shown in brown, and the existing buildings are kind of at the top of the slide and shown in gray. And then there's that zoning boundary that splits it. In considering this zoning amendment, staff analyzed the Lakeville PCD regulations and the BP regulations and found that the project could proceed under either rule set. So the real reason for this amendment is just to have one unified set of rules applied to the entire site. It's cleaner to have zoning boundaries aligned with property lines, and it just, facilitates more straightforward development. But nonetheless, the development would work under either rule set. And I'm happy to answer questions about the project description, but I'm trying not to go into them too much because that's not under the purview of the city council tonight. Yeah, you'd like me to mention that? Okay. Prior to consideration by the Planning Commission, there was, the city processed a lot merger. Originally, this site had 8 parcels. There were 7 in the Lakeville PCD and then 1 in the BP zoning district. And those were merged last fall to facilitate this development, and that was required because you can't have a building cross a property line. So normally that would be something that would be done prior to building permit, but here it was done before that. And mainly, it was done before that because the federal funding that's supporting this development required the lot merger to be processed last year. Let's move on to the next slide. Just real quick, I just want to kind of, and again, I can get into detail about the project, but I just want to show you this is an elevation drawing, or a rendering rather, of Fisher Drive view of the proposed project, the project that was approved by the Planning Commission. As you can see, there's landscaping, planters, a little bit of parking, and then a 175,000 square foot building. Let's slide on to the next one, please. This slide shows existing conditions at the top. That's the building that the city approved in 2016 and was constructed in 2018. That's where LabCon has a warehouse. To the bottom is the proposed, and the intention with the design is to have the new match the old so that it presents a unified visual image to the community. Next slide. You guys aren't expected to read what's on this drawing, but I just want to lay out that the ground floor plan shows production areas in blue, a warehouse in green, and then office entry and bathrooms and whatnot in brown. Next slide, please. This is the second floor. More of the same offices on the top floor with a small second floor warehouse to the right of the drawing. Thank you. Next slide. So prior to coming here tonight, there was a public notice in the newspaper and then mailed to owners and occupants within 1,000 feet of the site. So far, no public comment was received by staff. Next slide. Recap about the environmental review that was done. And this is attachment 4. The Planning Commission made findings stating that the project was consistent with CEQA and approved the site plan and architectural review and made a recommendation to the City Council. So environmental clearance has been provided by the Planning Commission's action. Next slide real quick. So the basis for all that you do when you review something is the general plan. And then for this project in particular, Chapter 19 and Chapter 25 address amendments relating to the Lakeville PCD, and then the amendments to just change the zoning map. And your staff report provides the analysis for that. Next slide. So in conclusion, staff recommends that you adopt the ordinance to change the zoning map from PCD to BP and to change the Lakeville PCD to remove this site from that document. And with that, next slide is my favorite. The end. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them, and thank you.
And thank you, and let's bring it up to the council to see if there's any questions on this. And seeing no questions from the council on this, except from Council Member Gator Thompson.
My question is, it's really not on the zoning, the changing, because that is just, it makes sense. It's more consistent with the entire area. But mine is on the landscaping and the lighting. On page 17, we had talked about there was 60 non-native trees and 65 native trees. And we really wanted to up that to native trees and native planting. And I don't see that change here. But that is separate from the zoning. I understand that, but I'd like a comment on that.
I think you're asking if they could identify what comments from Planning
At the
Commission
Planning
were
Commission, and was
incorporated.
that followed through?
To be sure I understand the question is, did the Planning Commission require additional native trees when they approved the SPAR? And was
No.
that done? Okay.
No, it was, instead of 60 non-native trees that you would have some non-native trees in the front of the building because of root. So we weren't saying no to the non-natives.
Okay.
But the majority would be certainly above 65 would be native.
Okay.
And that.
And if the, excuse me, and if, I think at the planning commission meeting, I wanted to maybe repeat something. The staff report that was originally presented in the packet had incorrect information about the number of native trees. And I'm happy to, if you can bear with me while I unfortunately flip through my staff report to find the tree information, but the numbers were incorrect and they grossly understated the number of natives that were proposed.
I think that's correct, but that's not what it says in here.
It says in the city council report or online for the planning commission
Well,
report?
I'm just reading it on page 17.
So page 17 would be the the planning commission report. Okay. So there'd be
I just wanna make it
78% would be native, or 97 trees, or what's actually in the drawings.
Okay.
And 28 non-native, or 22% non-native.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Sorry.
fine.
Took me a moment to get to my numbers. I should have looked to the left.
No,
when I
that's
wrote it down.
perfect.
Sorry
you.
about that. Thank you.
Okay, well then, let's open our public comment period on this. Did we receive anything on this online?
There were no public comments submitted prior to the meeting on this item.
Thank you. And let's check with our Zoom audience to see if anyone wants to speak on this item.
Members of the public attending in person should bring their speaker cards to the clerk's desk if they have not already done so. Members of the public attending online who wish to speak to this item should raise their virtual hand or press *9 if participating by phone. Speakers are reminded to be respectful in their comments and that this meeting is being translated. Please pause between sentences for translation. Threats of violence and obscenity are ground for removal from this meeting. A countdown will appear for the convenience of the speaker and the viewers. Your microphone will be muted at the end of the countdown. The first speaker will be acknowledged and invited to speak when the countdown begins. Please make sure to unmute yourself when you are invited to do so. Mayor, there are 0 Zoom public comments.
Thank you very much. And I have no in-person comment cards, and so I'll close the public comment and bring it back to council. Councilmember Healy?
I will move approval of introduction of the ordinance.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion from Healy and a second from Cater Thompson. And now we'll do a roll call vote.
Barnacle,
Yes.
Cater Thompson,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes?
McDonald,
Yes?
Now,
Yes.
Posake,
Yes.
Shribs.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. We'll move to our next item. And our next item is a resolution authorizing application for grant funding to develop a specific plan for Corona Road Smart Station Priority Development Area, and finding that this action is not a project pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15378. And presenting for this, we have Christina Paul, our staff.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Christina Paul, Senior Planner in the Planning Department, and I am going to quickly walk through the PDA application, or the grant funding PDA application. So what we are here to talk about this evening is the possibility that the city has to apply for grant funding to develop a specific plan for the Corona Road Smart Station Priority Development Area. The Priority Development Area program is a program of the Association of Bay Area Governments and the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. They combined fairly recently and are offering this grant opportunity that is focused on the Priority Development Area program. The goals of that program are to increase housing supply, boost transit ridership and reduce vehicle miles traveled, increase walking, biking, carpooling, and car sharing, and retaining and expanding community assets throughout the PDAs that different cities across the region have identified. The PDA program is an opportunity for cities and other jurisdictions to identify areas that are adjacent to high-quality transit stops for a particular focus in their planning exercises. The PDA program by participating in the PDA program, Petaluma has the opportunity to apply for grant funding like what we are talking about this evening, for both planning and infrastructure investments. ABAG has quite a bit of funding that they're distributing throughout the region, and very little of it is going to areas outside of PDAs. And right now there is a planning grant availability out for cities to apply for a maximum of $1.2 million to develop or update specific plans. Petaluma originally established a priority development area around the downtown smart station. It was titled the Lakeville Priority Development Area. That was in 2007. That was then expanded in 2009 and noted in the smart station area plan, as was the planned Corona Roads Smart Station. In 2019, ABAG and MTC had an opportunity for cities to identify new priority development areas and to expand existing or expand or edit existing priority development areas. And at that time, the city expanded the downtown or Lakeville priority development area and also established the Corona Road Smart Station priority development area. These are maps of the two priority development areas. The downtown Lakeville PDA is in purple at the bottom of the slide, and the Corona Road station is in green. You can see that the red circles on each of these areas delineate a half mile from each of those stations. You can see they're not quite circular because the stations themselves are not quite circular. At least half of the priority development area has to be within that circle, and then the city is allowed to extend beyond those boundaries. With the Corona Road station in particular, we wanted to allow the city the opportunity to look at the whole area around that station, and then also the opportunity to do more detailed planning on North McDowell Boulevard out to East Washington, where we almost have the two priority development areas meet. Again, this enables us to apply for planning funding for these areas as well as infrastructure funding, which was a significant consideration in shaping the shapes of these PDAs. Here's a bit of a closer look at that Corona Road Station PDA. We are proposing to submit a grant application to develop a specific plan. Many of us have been talking quite a bit about the general plan over the course of the last couple of years, so we want to be really clear about what a specific plan is. And a specific plan, as the name might imply, is an opportunity to be more specific than we can be in the general plan. The general plan really sets that umbrella policy framework and direction and land use, and the specific plan allows us to drill down a little bit more and talk more about what street dimensions we might be interested in, or more urban design guidelines that we might want to look at. And in this case, we would be doing all of those things, and we'd be developing specific development standards, implementation measures to support whatever vision the leadership and community arrive at for this area. Specific plans generally take between 1 and 2 years to complete. And I'm happy to answer any other questions. I also want to note that specific plans in California are governed by the California Government Code, which, like the requirements for a general plan, have particular content areas that you need to address, including utilities, zoning, CEQA, etc.
Wonderful, thank you.
Talking a little bit more. Excuse me?
Okay, please continue.
Talking a little bit more about the project, there is a brief articulation of the potential vision for this specific plan area. And I really want to emphasize that this is one step in the potential project process to develop a specific plan. This first step is just applying for a grant. If we did receive funding, we would then come back to council like we did with the general plan and say, what's the scope that we really want to do here? But in general, the idea that we have is to work on making this area a complete and livable neighborhood, particularly around that new smart station. to support some of the city's most vulnerable residents. And this area is being identified as having quite a few vulnerable residents as part of the general plan process, to address potential flooding and to give the city the opportunity to talk about the future of that area, the whole future of that area around the urban growth boundary. Maria, I'm sorry, am I talking too fast? I see that your hand is up. Our translator's hand is up.
Hey, Christina. Yes, she wants you to slow down a little bit. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. Looking at the timeline for the application, the notice of funding availability came out in December of last year. The applications are due later this month. The ABEG MTC anticipates dispersing funds towards the end of this year, and there's currently a 3-year time horizon to spend that grant funding. In considering City Council's goals and priorities, as well as the vision document that the General Plan Advisory Committee has put together for the general plan, working on supporting the development of a complete neighborhood that is accessible to multiple modes of transportation, as well as thinking about a little bit more density around that major transit hub, is of priority across many of the different aspects that these two different vision and goal and priority documents cover. In the packet, we have a proposed resolution. ABEG and MTC did ask for us to come to City Council so that City Council could express support of an application for doing this work to make sure that this is something the city is really interested in. And the key points of that are articulated on this slide here. And that is it.
Thank you very much. Let's bring it back and see if the council has any.
Heather Hines has her hand raised.
My apology, Heather. There's the hand. Go.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I just want to emphasize again, and I think Christina touched on it, but just for clarity and transparency, what is before the council tonight is just the authorization to apply for the grant. Should we receive funding notification, we would then come back to the council to talk about next steps with that specific plan, an RFP that would go out, what that would include. Similar to what we did with the general plan, we did discussion and crafting that RFP before it went out. So want to make sure it's very clear that the item before you this evening is just to apply for the grant. Should we get that award, we would then come back to the council to talk about structuring that specific plan and the associated RFP.
Thank you. Now I'd like to bring it back to the council and see if there's any questions at the council. Councilmember Healy.
Thank you. I realize this doesn't commit us to extending the urban growth boundary in this area. And I also recognize that our current urban growth boundary ordinance includes an expansion area in this area, although it's smaller than what's delineated here. But nevertheless, it does seem to imply that we're headed in that direction, and I think that gives heartburn to some people in the community. It gives heartburn to me. But I guess the question is, if we do proceed down this track, are there opportunities as part of our new general plan to make it at least a no net increase in the urban growth boundary, that we could pull in areas where that are inside the urban growth boundary now that don't need to be going forward, so we can say the net acreage within the urban growth boundary remains the same or is less, even if we do this expansion area? Thank you.
Christina, you want to take that?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Healy. That's certainly a possibility that we could look at, and thank you for bringing up the subject. We do anticipate that a discussion of the urban growth boundary will also happen as part of the general plan process. So this specific planning process would be building off of that conversation. And that is a possibility that we look at to not have any net increase of the urban growth boundary.
Thank you. Other council questions?
I don't have questions. I have
Councilmember Cater Thompson.
When the Corona Eli specific plan was, came before the public, the biggest problem with that was that it teed into Corona Road and that the Corona overcrossing was supposed to have a full interchange crosstown connector there, and then politics got in the way. So this goes way back. And so when I'm seeing the expansion for this particular area, we really have to look at the Corona overcrossing, which I believe we're going to be doing a study through SCTA for $250,000 for the 101 crossing on McGregor and at Corona. And of course, I believe, and the city manager can correct me, that there's going to be work done at the crossing at Corona where the postal trucks take a left before. Is that going to be
I know there's a
widened?
CIP project, and I've got Chris Bolt on Zoom if we want to confirm. And Chris, there is a CIP project on Corona, correct?
Yes, there is.
And what does that include?
Corona is still being evaluated. Sorry, I'm off camera at the moment, but we can get details to you on that. But we are evaluating the post office ingress and egress situation.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that. So I think the expansion area is important if we really care about alternative transportation besides cars. You need to have high density around the smart stations. And that's why we're looking at specific plans, or there's one for downtown. And now we're finally coming around, 30 years later, really looking at the bigger picture. And so I'm actually very happy that we're going in this direction. And, I know people are fearful of more development because we hear it all the time, but the community is not going to stay stagnant. And if we really care about alternative transportation, we need to have this as a specific plan in the expansion area. So I'll make the motion.
Well, first we'll go to public comment, but we do have other questions from the council. So Councilmember Barnacle.
Yeah, I'm similarly excited about having a specific plan for this area. Have we engaged SMART in the county in this process at all?
I don't know for the grant process, but I see Christina's hand up, so go ahead, Christina.
Yes, thanks, Councilmember Barnacle. We haven't engaged them in this grant application process. That would be something that we would do. I mean, I know that we are working with them fairly consistently around the station, but that's something that we would do in more depth specifically for this specific plan if we get the grant funding.
Right, okay.
Can I add response to that too, Mayor?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Barnacle, we are also working closely with SMART for another grant opportunity applying to the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities. Their recently released notice of funding, and that is something we're working with SMART, the city, and Danco Communities. And that does involve some improvements around both on McDowell and Corona, looking to make good connections both with the future station and with the multi-use path that will be coming through that area, as well as the city's, I think it's the McDowell, I'm forgetting what the project is called, Gina, Smart Streets.
It's North McDowell Complete Streets?
Complete Streets, thank you. And so kind of weaving those together. So I would anticipate we'll have continued discussion with SMART to make sure all those pieces are talking to each other.
Okay, I'll save the rest. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Council Member Shribs.
Thank you. I'd just like to support what Janice said about the where Corona and the freeway and McDowell, that particular section right in there. But also, as we develop this particular area and with the train station and look at the properties around it, I'm hoping that we will also include working with the county on the rest of Corona Road, because if we want to really extend that out and have transport between us and Pengrove and others, that would possibly be a major corridor on a Corona Road heading in a couple different directions. So for improvements. So I just make sure that this is a specific plan, but the entire Corona Road needs to be looked at with the county as we do this.
I couldn't concur more. I think we're going to be able to skip council comments tonight, having jumped so quickly into endorsing here. But I would like to hear from the public, and so let's open the public comment period. And have we heard online any comments?
Mayor McDonald, no comments were submitted for this item prior to the meeting.
Thank you. And let's check our Zoom audience.
Members of the public attending online who wish to speak to this item should raise their virtual hand or press *9 if participating by phone. Speakers are reminded to be respectful in their comments and that this meeting is being translated. Please pause between sentences for translation. The first speaker will be acknowledged and invited to speak when the countdown begins. Please make sure to unmute yourself when you are invited to do so. And Mayor, we do have one online speaker.
Thank you very much. And I have no speaker cards in-house. And so let's hear from our one Zoom.
Okay. All right, Ben Peters, you can unmute yourself and begin.
Great, thanks. Good night, everyone. I would encourage the council to provide specific direction to staff to engage with the county on this broader topic of the priority development area. One thing that was interesting in attending the County Planning Commission's draft EIR on the housing element was the amount of housing proposed in and around Petaluma. Everyone knows the significant RHNA numbers that our county has. And so it was very surprising to see the amount of housing proposed for the Petaluma community. More specifically, that was 0 low-income housing and 0 moderate-income housing, and only one site identified. The Petaluma planning area was, I guess I will skip the adjectives for describing the table in comparison to the other communities. And so again, we need to have a stronger relationship with the county on this topic. One example is the area that we're talking about expanding the urban growth boundary could have been a housing opportunity site for the county that could have been rezoned as part of their housing element, satisfying both the county's needs as well as our desire to do TOD development. So again, please work harder with the county. There are 0 sites identified around Petaluma for low or moderate income housing. There's the one site on Bodega Avenue, which they're going to build something, and then all of Rohnert Park and Cotati's housing is going to be located in Pengrove. So to Councilman Shrib's comments about that corridor, yeah, all of the county housing for Southern Sonoma County is going to be in Pengrove. And with the builder's remedy, those sites are going to be upzoned regardless. The last thing I'll say on the priority development areas is that when the maps were being created, we omitted our bus station. So if you want to get across town, you're not going to do so in a priority development area that's funded as a part of this. So when we get to actually implementing this grant, I look forward to planning a bus station, which actually makes sense for our community. Thank you.
That's
Mayor, that's the last public speaker.
okay. Well, we will close comments, bring it back to council here. And Councilman Barnacle?
Yeah. Along the lines of what Mr. Peters said, I was thinking the same thing, that given the intersection and the proximity to the county and SMART's role in all of this, it seems our application is going to be much stronger if we're talking about the challenges and the opportunities that the county has and the city has with, Sonoma County is sort of unique in the ABAG region with our urban growth boundaries, and yet the county got so much housing. And I think that the opportunity for the county and the city to work more collaboratively on housing is something that's unique and might differentiate our application. So I don't want to direct you to do your jobs on this, but I think it's going to make for a much stronger application. I support what Councilmember Healy said about no net loss. If we can do that, I don't know whether we're not going to litigate that tonight, I don't think, but I do feel strongly that I would say that one of the things that I'm really concerned about in the next RHNA cycle is what happens to the areas outside of city limits with how much housing that county has to build. And I'd love to see SMART actually recognize the vision that we all campaigned for back when we were campaigning for it, and build walkable communities. And with the county having its development funds for affordable housing, it feels like we might be able to, take some of their housing, but get some money for it, work on infrastructure money, something. But if we work collaboratively with the county in this specific plan, it seems like there's some good opportunities to get some mutual benefit. So I'd like to see the county and the city be the lead, and the county and SMART at least provide letters of support. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Healy?
So just to follow on that, the dilemma as I see it here is that if we do expand our urban growth boundary in this area and allow for housing there, it'll be annexed. And the only way it can really be developed is with city services, which means it needs to be annexed. So with city water and city sewer, and then any units that get built out there would count towards the city's RHNA requirements, not the county's. It's just this funny way the lines are drawn. And yet on the other hand, Pengrove is kind of an oddity in that it has a private water company that supplies most of the community with Russian River water. And Central Pengrove is served by a long-term contract by the Petaluma Sewer System. So, if you look at all the pieces coming together, that's kind of where the county has to go, because they've got water and sewer service there and they don't have it anywhere else in the South County. So, I'm not saying that's ideal, but I think that's why you see the chips falling the way they are. Anyway, I'll just throw that out there.
Thank you. And anyone else?
I just want to follow up with what
Councilmember Cater Thompson.
What Councilmember Healy said. So with Pengrove, they get their water from, is the sewer from the city and the water's from the Russian River? Because I thought the city provided water.
No,
to Pengrove.
it's a private company. I believe it's Cal Water that serves Central Pengrove. But then Central Pengrove also is served by the Petaluma wastewater plant.
Oh, so it's the wastewater plant.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we
I thought it
provide
was-
sewer
I thought it
service
was
up there, but
water
not
also,
water service.
potable water
But they
also.
get the Cal Water, if that's the right company, gets water out of the Russian River from the aqueducts.
Thank you.
I'm really excited about this grant because I think good planning is going to make for good outcomes, and having somebody else's contribution to it's very valuable. But I'm also excited that the timeline on this, if the funding is not awarded for about a year and then the RFP presentation from staff comes out a year, most of our general plan update basics should be well in hand, and we will be ready for the specific level. And we will be able to the specific plan will be able to be informed by all the update plans that we've, gotten some consensus on by end of year or so. So that's a good point for me. And anyone have a motion in mind? Councilmember Posake?
I'm in support as well, and I would make a motion
Thank you.
to authorize the grant application.
Thank you very much. So that's a motion from Posake and a second from Cater Thompson. Roll call.
Barnacle,
Yes.
Cater Thompson,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
Posake,
Yes.
Shribs.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to our item 7, which is a resolution appointing Petaluma residents to fill 5 vacant seats, up to 5 vacant seats on the General Plan Advisory Committee for the General Plan update, and finding this action is not a project pursuant to CEQA Guidelines Section 15378B5. And Christina Paul back into the...
Mr. Mayor, before we jump in, could I raise an
Yes.
issue on this? So I know we've all submitted our rankings to the city clerk, and we're all waiting for that to get put up on the screen. But the staff report indicated that once that's put up there, we might want to mess around with it and not just accept what came out, which I think would be the mother of all food fights if we went in that direction. So, and we did not do that in my recollection with the appointment of the original GPAC. We just accepted the original rankings and went with that. So, without sight unseen, I think it would be preferable if we just go with whatever the rankings are and not try to fuss with them after they get out, because I don't know how we would solve that problem.
Let me recap how I understand the item to go tonight, and then tell me if it fits the concern you have, or you have further comment. Staff will make a presentation, and council will have an opportunity for question on that. Public comment will occur, and at the end of public comment, before council comment, we'll post what that straw poll is, and then after council comments and discussions on it, deliberation on the matter, if the council feels that the straw poll represents the intentions well enough, those 5 highest ranking from that ranked choice operation of the straw poll will go into the resolution, and we'll be looking for a motion on resolution with the straw poll data in. If the council feels that it should be amended from the straw poll and different candidates, that deliberation can occur, and I will be looking for a motion at that time to reballot with a real, with the intention that that poll will be a real outcome. That will be the top 5 of that will go into the resolution. So that's kind of preceding things. Do you want the question now, Councilmember Barnacle, or hold for the staff presentation?
I'll hold, thanks.
And was that somewhat clear enough to all parties? Good. Passing back to Christina Paul, please.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Christina Paul. Good to see you. Let me go ahead and share my screen. We are here this evening to give us an opportunity to appoint 5 additional members, or 5 backfilled folks to the GPAC. And I want to go through very quickly what the GPAC's role is. The GPAC is the General Plan Advisory Committee. It is an ad hoc committee put together by the City Council that has an advisory role in helping to craft the general plan documents and ensuring that the general plan is aligned with the city's long-term vision and helping to shape the vision for the general plan, and in providing feedback on general plan direction to Planning Commission and City Council. We also really value the diversity of the GPAC folks' experience and the points of view that they can bring to the process. GPAC meets monthly, as it has since it was put together in January and then first convened in March of 2021. That will continue to be the case. We anticipate wrapping up the general plan process at the end of this year or in early 2024. and the general plan project manager is the liaison to this committee. In this round of reaching out to applicants.
Christina, sorry, can I just interrupt really quick and remind you, we have translators trying to translate what you're saying, so if you could slow down just a little bit. Thank you.
Sorry. I should be trained, as the translators do translate all of our GPAC meetings. I apologize, Monica and Maria. In this round of opening applications to serve on the GPAC, we issued alerts or invitations to apply via the community update, via email to our general plan list and to some community stakeholders. We reached out on social media. We let the members of the current GPAC know that this opportunity was coming up. And we also reached out to council and the city commissions, committees, and boards to invite them to invite folks either on those bodies or who were friends or family or acquaintances to apply. We received 21 applications and we had one person withdraw. The applications were restricted to folks who live in the city of Petaluma or who have a Petaluma address but are just outside of city limits. We did get one person who lives outside of city limits but has a Petaluma address. And we really are grateful to the folks who entered the applicant pool and are willing to serve the community in this not insubstantial way. We are running the process in precisely the way that we did in 2021 with the original GPAC appointment process. We got quite a few applications. Rather than appointing 2 or 3 folks to a body, we were in the first place, it was 21 and now it's 5 out of 20. So we supplied council with some materials to help make decisions in terms of who council members will be supporting. That included the applications of each of the folks who are interested in serving, as well as an optional GPAC worksheet that staff put together indicating the quadrant that the applicants live in, names and details, some notes on self-declared areas of expertise as folks tried to extract from the applications, and then an area that council members could use for scoring applications and trying to track all of the applicants. Again, that material was really optional, and it is ultimately up to council to use whatever materials you would like, including knowledge of some of the applicants, to arrive at your rankings. We wanted to note what our applicant pool looks like. So we had a slightly different geographic distribution of applicants this time. We're so glad that folks across the city are interested in serving, and then a diversity of expertise in the applicant pool as well. The process to nominate the GPAC members is going to go as so. Council has submitted some preliminary recommendations for the folks that they would like to serve on the GPAC. That is in ranked choice. So this is a ranked choice voting exercise, or at least a version of ranked choice voting. And we have taken those rankings and assigned points. So if somebody was the top choice, they got 5 points. If they were the bottom of 5, they got 1 point. And then we add up all of the points that folks get across all of the different council members' choices. We're then going to go, before we go into the results that we have, which are preliminary. We are going to go and let public comment happen, as well as any council questions that arise. Then we'll present those preliminary results, and council can elect to select the top 5 or have a discussion about a better alternative. And I will cede the floor for that public comment and any questions that may arise.
Right. One question I'd like you to add to the conversation is we had an omission, I think, in the template. Can you talk about how we rectified bringing all applicants in?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor McDonnell. We had one applicant that got left out of the packet. we're very grateful to folks who flagged that for us. We're not sure how that happened from an administrative perspective, but we made sure to let council know last week that that person was an applicant and to update our attachments for this evening to include her. We really are apologetic for that, and thank you to folks who said, hey, there's somebody that you're missing.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Barnacle.
Yeah, when we did the first appointments, it made more sense to me to do ranked choice, and I'm not seeing why we're doing ranked choice with so few, and like there's more people voting than there are people to vote, like places to fill, and I'm just wondering why we did rankings instead of just a regular tally.
Is that would you
Yeah.
would you like me to have
Would you like to
go with
answer
that?
that? Yes, please.
So my understanding is that this is 5 people is more people than usually get appointed in the rounds of putting people on planning commission and that kind of thing. And it's a larger applicant pool. We typically get not 20 applicants to a particular body. And so this is staff's way of helping to make sure that, as Councilmember Healy expressed a concern for, that there's not a super long conversation, that we can try to distill people's ideas and present an assimilated opinion for council's decision-making process.
Councilmember Cater Thompson.
I just want some clarification. So there's an applicant that lives outside the city limits, but has a city address, and is that applicant part of this process?
I can give you a little bit more information if that's helpful, council member.
Yes,
absolutely.
That
Please
would be
do.
helpful. Thank you.
Certainly. So in the last round of GPAC applications, we did restrict applicants to within city limits only. The Climate Action Commission does allow 1 or 2 members to have a Petaluma address but live outside of city limits. And we wanted to allow council to have that option this time around also. I want to note that the one person who applied is a person who's involved in agriculture. So that may be something that would be appealing to council members as a diverse opinion.
I just want to follow up. The last round, we had the same situation, but the interpretation was different, and that person couldn't be on the committee. So why is it a change this time?
We thought that because GPAC does not have legislation that specifies whether or not folks have to have a Petaluma address, that this city council may wish to make a different decision. If you would like to stick with it, then that's also great.
So if that, maybe people didn't realize that. So we may have gotten more applicants. And so I find that it's, I'd hate to change the game now unless we open it back up to determining how many people could be from outside the city limits on this and give them an opportunity to be an applicant.
May I ask our city attorney, does the enabling legislation allow this? And is it possible at this time to enter into that kind of
We don't have
change?
We don't have enabling legislation for the GPAC.
So this is all discretionary to the council.
And I actually would correct Christina. I don't believe that was the issue. I believe that, and I'm going to just call it out, I think Panama moved out of the area but still owned his house. I can't remember what the distinction was, but I don't think that he still lived in Petaluma. Was that correct?
That is correct.
Yes. So it's a totally, yeah.
I believe 2 or maybe 3 of the 5 vacancies were due to GPAC members moving outside of city limits.
And outside of the Petaluma area, they no longer have Petaluma addresses.
Oh, well, that's clearer. But I don't know if we need more conversation. Councilmember Barnacle.
Panama still has, he lives on Eli Road. He still has a Petaluma address. So that's, he moved outside of city limits, but he's not in, he moved outside of city limits, but he still has a 94954 address, and he's like, you know, just right outside of town. Not that that
And
matters
it's my
for this.
understanding that it's a temporary move while rebuilding his primary residence. So, you know, there's lots of confusion here, so maybe we'll.
And I know we encouraged him to apply.
Okay, any other questions?
I didn't hear what she said. What was that?
That I'm sure that Panama was encouraged to apply.
Staff did reach out to Panama to encourage him to apply.
Okay, well, let's go to the public comment element of this operation, and opening the public comment and checking first with online.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. We did receive 37 public comments on this item prior to the meeting. Those comments are posted online with the agenda packet.
Wonderful, thank you. And let's check it through our Zoom audience.
Members of the public attending online who wish to speak to this item should raise their virtual hand or press star 9 if participating by phone. Speakers are reminded to be respectful in their comments and that this meeting is being translated. Please pause between sentences for translation. The first speaker will be acknowledged and invited to speak when the countdown begins. Please make sure to unmute yourself when you are invited to do so. And Mayor, we do not have anybody, no attendees. Or actually, now we do have one. We do, yes, have one.
Thank you, and I have one card here, so let's start with our Zoom participant.
All right, I have Eric Vasquez. Eric, you can begin speaking now. You can unmute yourself.
Great, thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. Good evening, council members. I just wanted to make this quick and brief. I just wanted to express my support, and I would hope that the city council feels the same way in appointing my mother, Elda Vasquez Izaguirre, to the GPAC. She is a remarkable woman. She has had an amazing time living here in Petaluma for the last 25 years as a mother of two. She has been a staunch advocate for my sister when it comes to special needs, with my sister being on the autism spectrum disorder. She has fought relentlessly against both the Old Adobe School District and the Petaluma City School District for advocating for not only her rights, but rights of all students that need special needs. Additionally, she's also an immigrant from Honduras, so she knows the struggle of what it is to get by in a city that has been, well, unfortunately, predominantly white. So I would love to see someone like her be appointed to GPAC and to be a voice of someone who is not of a typical Petaluma resident. And we hope that the city council may consider the same thing. Thank you.
And Mayor, there are no more comments.
Thank you. We have one card for one speaker in the chambers. That's for Sharon Kirk. Maybe this is your opportunity.
Thank you. Good evening, council members and mayor. My name is Sharon Kirk, as Kevin indicated. I have submitted my application for GPAC, as you know, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself and introduce myself to some of you who may not know me, and tell you a little bit why I think I'd be a good fit for the committee. So my husband, our daughter, and I moved to Petaluma in 1995 from San Francisco. And over several years of traveling around the country looking for our forever home, we would come up to Petaluma and stay with friends on the weekends. And it took us about 3 years before we had that duh moment, and we said, it's Petaluma. And so we moved here. And it's been a wonderful place to raise our kids. We've raised both our daughter and our son here, and we've been involved in the community every step of the way. So from youth sports to site committees to other volunteer activities that added to our school environments, we've been there and we've been participating. In 2017, the year our son graduated from high school, I joined Petaluma Urban Chat to focus my energy on issues of land use policies and practices. Urban Chat, as many of you know, is an alliance of residents who work to advance community education and dialogue about our city's future with a focus on livable, sustainable growth and development and transportation patterns for our city's future. Urban Chat has been in the forefront of educating the community on issues and considerations for developing the new general plan. We've hosted 16+ forums on these issues, just talking about the context for considering the general plan and what we need to think about. And I believe my work with Urban Chat has really well prepared me for GPAC. But beyond my personal interests in urban planning and my work with Urban Chat, my kids have also prepared me for this work, as our kids tend to do. Our daughter is a millennial. Our son is a Gen Zer. And while they're very close, they have very different perspectives about what's important for the future of Petaluma. And they have very different perspectives than I have about what I think our city can be. Our current general plan was, for its time, really visionary in many ways, but we have new challenges now, including how we're going to deal with carbon neutrality, how we're going to get there, how we're going to adapt to climate changes that we can't stop, and how we're going to house all Petalumans in an environmentally conscious way. Those are just a few of the things. I've lived in many different cities, and I understand we get the city we want through vision and hard work. And as a committee member, I really want to focus on a vision and a plan that works for all Petalumans. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. I have one more card. Kevin Kelly.
Good evening, and thanks for taking my application. I've lived here for 19 years, and I came from Washington, D.C. In July of last year, July 31st, I finally retired from the federal government after being an architect, a registered architect, since 1982. I moved in that position. I could have lived anywhere because I was the senior architect for Workplace. I also worked on the federal courthouses. In fact, Sacramento, I worked on that one, and I worked on a San Francisco federal building, etc. So I could have lived anywhere, and I chose Petaluma. I've been in 49 of the 50 states, so I know wherever I speak that this is a very, very special place. And I want to, now that I'm retired, I would like to bring my interests, talents, or whatever, and experience. I have a lot of experience in housing. When I have 33 years in the government, but I have 14 years in the private sector, most of which was doing large-scale housing, as well as when I first got out of school, working with a developer in Southern California building cookie cutter houses, which was all the rage back then. So I'm very experienced with that. I also was a co-author of the government's Sustainability Matters, and I don't think there's anybody in the General Services Administration Office of the Chief Architect, from whence I came, that isn't very passionate and knowledgeable about sustainability. It really is the gold standard for the federal government in terms of sustainability. So, I've been involved. I've started being involved with Urban Chat. I was honestly too busy with my last job to get much involved previously. But as soon as I was free of the federal government, I started working with Dave and Sharon in the Urban Chat. I've also commented on the Hotel Weaver quite a bit. I'm fascinated by that project. So I bring a certain, perhaps a more architectural lens to planning. But as I said, my master's degree was in urban design. And
Thank you, sir, but your time has expired.
that's just about it.
Well, thank you. Okay. So that will close public comment for the evening. And the next step, I believe, is to present the straw poll data. Am I correct on that, staff?
Correct. Christina will share her presentation again.
Thank you. I'm figuring out how to use Zoom. I apologize.
And we'll take a minute to think about that data and think about how public comment or council comments will proceed at that point.
All right, so I will present the results of the preliminary straw poll. I'm not going to read through these lists, but we will have the results from each of the council members in the record. This is a summary of all of the folks in the applicant pool who got points from council. Again, council gave us a list of their top 5 in ranked order, and we assigned points. The higher you are in the list, the more points you get. And then we added all of that up to arrive at the ranking. So you can see that the top person got 19 points, and she was voted for by all council members. And then you can see the points go down from there. One of the surprises of our ranked choice voting exercise is that we have a tie for 4th place. So we have a top 6 instead of a top 5. And there are a variety of ways that council can choose to move forward from there. Here we have our top, not 5, but 6. And I'm happy to go back to any of this. You can see that with the current GPAC on the left, this is our geographic distribution. It gets a little bit more even as we look at the whole GPAC with those potential top 6 and then the current GPAC. And this is, again, the list of those top 6 people and the sum of the points that they received, how many council members voted for them, which council members voted for them, and just a few different options that we can make available to council that we have thought of. They include doing a revote for just those 3 folks who are tied to narrow it down to 2 folks. The council could elect to appoint 6 new members, or there is a possibility of a full re-ranking official vote. So we will leave that conversation to council.
Okay. I think you have
Let us
2
know if you have
slides that are going to be of interest to council to see repeatedly, the ranked value and the how many votes value. So I hope you're prepared to toggle back and forth between those. But now I'd like to take council comment and dialogue, and I'll start with Council Member Barnacle.
Yeah, can you put the slide back up, please, of the results?
And do you want all of the results? I'm sorry, I'm trying to go backwards.
Just the
But the choice is
No.
between the ranked choice one or the
one below, the one before it, I think it was. The one before that. Great, thanks. I wanted to take a peek. So one of the issues with ranked choice right now is that I'm seeing is that someone that can get 2 votes makes their way up into the top 4. And that doesn't seem like the intention here. I mean, there's a chance, I mean, it didn't happen, but there's a chance that someone who got 5 votes could get 5 points and be completely at the bottom. So if I were to pick 5, I would pick Kevin Kelly and Sharon Kirk and add them because they also have the most council support in terms of number of people who voted for them. And in terms of just sharing my personal opinion, I've worked with Sharon some, extremely insightful, and I think she would be a huge asset to the GPAC. So I would strongly recommend putting Sharon on the GPAC.
Can I ask that you make a little bit of a statement that you are in favor?
So
of
I
a
would propose
runoff
that,
of
I would
those three?
propose, I guess I'll make a motion that
Well,
we
well-
put Lizzie Wallach, Brent Newell, Elda Vasquez, Kevin Kelly, and Sharon Kirk as the 5 people.
I think before pursuing the motion, I think we ought to have a little bit of discussion across the table and bring back. Thank you. Councilmember Healy.
Thank you. I think in light of the results, I would support appointing the top 6 individuals and just expanding the group by 1 to avoid, and with all due respect to Councilmember Barnacle, I think you're just trying to carve off the person who doesn't agree with you ideologically. And I think we want as broad a representation of the community as we can in this GPAC, even if they don't agree with one of us in particular. So I think the top 6 would achieve that result, and I would support that.
Thank you. Councilmember Cater Thompson.
And I will support Brian Barnacle on his comment, and I think we're going for 5, and we should stick with 5. And I would go for also Lizzie Wallach, Brent Newell, Elda, Kevin Kelly, and Sharon Kirk.
Thank you. Anyone wish to comment on this agenda?
I will.
Councilmember Now.
I agree with Councilmember Healy that we should do this top 6 and leave it at that.
Thank you. Councilmember Shribs.
I do have one of my certifications is in statistics, and I'm looking at this style of ranked choicing, and I've submitted sort of like a little bit of a gripe about the process of the mathematics behind this. And to simplify it, basically you have 7 people making 5 votes, total of 35 votes for a total of 20 people spread over 20. And as far as volume of votes, and then especially when they get ranked, and so we do have cases here. This is a case in point where it might have been only just 2 people ranking at the top to create a 10 versus maybe someone that got on 4 or 5 as 1s and 2s don't even make it up to 10. So there's issues with volume of votes as well as how the ranking is done. Usually in ranked voting, if I can express that a little bit better, when we vote ranked voting, it's in our elections as a possibility, you would have maybe 4 candidates for 1 position. You would rank all 4, 1, 2, 3, all of them, down 4 through 1, and then for the 1 person. So there'd be a lot more numbers, a lot more ranking volume for the positions available. So mathematically, it would have been better to rank all 20 all the way down to 1, right down the list, and that would have been a more fair process. So I'm not particularly happy with this process, but I'm going to go with what we need to do, which is get down to 5 people with the process that we do have. So at this point, because there's, besides the 6, a 10 is not going to be that statistically different from a 7 or a 6 looking at it. So I'm a little worried about how to pick and choose at this point. If we have to get down to just 5, I think the group, I need to express, because I was on GPAC, as well as was Councilmember Janice Cater Thompson, and there's some holes that we're missing that I've experienced that higher needs in certain areas than other things. And the other thing I want to make sure, and that was not expressed in the actual stat and the data that comes out, is that actual needs for what the GPAC actually I think would really be needed. The other thing I want to mention is that all 20 candidates, what I found out is that the GPAC is an advisory committee, and as an advisory committee, they are giving advice to the consultants and to the planners. There's lots of planners there. They're in both of those consultants and the planning group. And there's lots of architects in the group. There's folks that do climate, that support open space. So those areas are pretty well covered. And there's other areas not so covered: diversity, equity, business, legal, health, art. Those things are kind of missing. And I was hoping that there'd be more in those areas that would be lifted up, getting in. But one thing about the council, the advisory committee, the way it works is that everybody gets a chance to have their say and talk and give feedback for what's happening now. We're gone from input, now we're going to more of an analysis and then what could happen. So there's a shift in what's needed from what the past to what we have in the near future because of the process is going down this road path that's going on. And what's really needed is for all 20 people that have applied to participate. And that's what I'm going to recommend. We may come down to 5, and I'm going to recommend that. But I want to emphasize all 20 people have qualities, experience, knowledge. And I would encourage all 20 because we have, as an example, one person on this list, Susan Kirks, who didn't make it on this list, comes to every meeting, came to every one of the workshop that we had, the work group meetings, gave input at the public comment area, has written numbers of letters, and has tremendous input into what is there. And she's had as much influence as the members that are actually on the committee. So I'm going to highly recommend as folks with planning experience who already participate quite well with lots of different governments. I would highly recommend and encourage every one of you, of the applicants, to join in because between public comment on front, comment on every single item that's going through it, plus the ability to write your comments and letters, to edit and review and come back, this process that's coming, we need all 20 people to be participants, equal participants, because it's all Zoom and you all can participate. So even though we're picking 5, and basically almost any 5 would actually work to fill it out. But so I just want to make sure I want to really encourage all 20 to become participants. That it not dependent on, oh, I'm on the committee or not on the committee. There's not a real distinction in the actual functionality of this operation. So I want to make that clear.
I really appreciate you bringing up that kind of community participation. That's a real positive message for the community. And the point about voting for 5, I think I need to check with our city attorney on this, but we can motion 6 tonight. It's an allowable thing. And I have to tell a little story from when we picked the GPAC. When we picked the GPAC, I think we were looking to try and have 15 members. And we had a little problem that we didn't feel the equity was quite right and there's certain concerns. And and now if you look at our social and environmental equity, that's the strongest existing traits in there. So we really beefed that up and tried, and those are people continuing to engage. But 15 was our number, and we weren't happy as a council. And we said, well, every council person gets to add 1. And 6 of the council people added 1, and we came up with 21. And I was the one that said, well, 21 seems like a lot of people. I'm just not going to appoint the 22nd one. So if I had appointed 22nd, we would have a commission of 22, which is what I think adding 6 tonight would give us. And I appreciate you saying we should have open communication. And if it's a matter of 1, for whatever reasons, I'm kind of okay with expanding the number to 6. So that would be my comment for the evening. And Councilmember Barnacle.
Yeah. Appreciate the point about bringing politics up here to the dais, Mr. Healy. My issue is that what appears to have happened is that 2 people got together and picked one person to be the number 1, and that immediately rises them up. And from a statistics standpoint, that's what I was asking about when I was asking why we were doing ranked instead of just pure votes, because Mr. Chestnut with 7 would actually be up there and Mr. Lloyd would not, and we would have 6 people with those. And if the number of votes still matters, instead of people being able to get together and skew the results, then whether we have 5 or whether we have 6 wouldn't matter. So I'm going to stick with 5. I've made a motion, and I'm looking for a second.
And I'll second that.
That's correct. We have a motion by Barnacle to take Wallach, Newell, Vasquez Izagari, Kevin Kelly, Sharon Kirk, and the second by Cater Thompson. And the motion is to put those names in the resolution, so I would like you to say you're motioning the resolution with those 5 names.
I'm making a motion to appoint Lizzie Wallach, Brent Newell, Elda Vasquez Izagari, Kevin Kelly, and Sharon Kirk to the General Plan Advisory Committee and putting them in the resolution.
And we'll need a
second.
And so we have the same group making the motion and second, and any comment, no comment? Then we'd like a roll call vote.
Barnacle,
Yes.
Cater Thompson,
Yes.
Healy,
No.
McDonald,
Yes.
Now,
No.
Posake,
Yes.
Shribs.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-2 with Healy and Now voting no.
Okay, and believe that ends our business for the evening. Thank you very much, everyone who stayed to the end, and thank you, council.